Hello humans, this is Retro Rocket Man, back again with another video. This time round I've got a hold of this dragon from the relatively recent Marvel film Shang and the Legend of the Ten Rings. I was able to get him for about $5 on clearance, and I figured he'd be a good character to paint. He's got a lot of lovely sculpted detail, and I'm going to start by giving him an undercoat, get rid of all those plain plastic colours, and give me something to start with. So first up, I'm going to select my paints, and these are a few of the paints I've chosen, just some acrylics, nothing too fancy. And the green that I have is probably a bit too bright for this stage, so my first coat I need my green to be a bit darker, so I'm mixing in some blue, just putting a bit in, see what it comes up like. Once I achieve the colour I think I want, I'm just going to pay attention to all the scales and paint the body of the dragon predominantly green. First coat, the darkest coat. So here you have it with the base coat of the green, all nice and dry. Next up, I'm going to pay attention to his, what would you call it? Horns and hair, whatever adorns a dragon's head. And I'm going to go with a nice strong red colour, a darkish colour to begin with. Going to approach this much in the same way that I will the body, and start off dark and then add lighter colours as I go along. Next up is a bit of a brighter red, just to catch some of the higher contours of the sculpt, just to give it more dimension and depth. And this will be a gradual process of just building and building and building until I get all the layers and the depth that I want. So thirdly, I'm going into the lighter red again, just sort of concentrating around the tips, more like a dry brush approach than anything, just to catch those raised areas to highlight the sculpt. This whole process just requires you to just build a little bit at a time until you get the desired effect that you're after. Now for his underbelly, I'm just using a brown that I've made from a bit of blue, a bit of yellow and a bit of red. And I'm just going to use this on the feet and the belly area, again just to give it a bit more interest and contrast. Now it's time for my shoe polish. This is black liquid shoe polish mixed with a little bit of green paint, just to tinge it slightly so it's not too strong, and it's going to complement the green paint that I've already used on the body. So I'll just be just liberally covering the scales in sections at a time, and whilst it's still wet, I'm going to be wiping it off with a rag to leave the shoe polish in those dark recesses, deep recesses of the scales, and make them really pop. And I'm going to repeat this process over the entire body of the dragon, being careful just to wipe it off in the same direction as the flow of the scales. You don't want to take too much of that black out of those dark recesses. You want to leave a fair bit behind so they pop. The same process will be applied to the head. This is a bit more subtle because he doesn't have those deep scales on his face, but it will still make the sculpted details of his face pop out. Once that's dry, it's time to go back with a very light green and just create some highlights and contrast. Again, I'm just using a dry brush approach, not too much paint on the brush, and I'm just catching the raised highlights of the sculpt. And this leaves a lot of the deepness in the shoe polish process still there, while just catching those highlights and creating a much more depth and interesting look. Just a little bit of paint on the brush, not too much, and just lightly touching off on those raised sculpted areas, and it just catches it and gives a wonderful effect. And it's just a matter of working it till you get to the desired intensity that you want. A little bit at a time is better than too much all at once. And I'm also creating highlights on the belly area with the same brown but with some white added to lighten it up, just to create that contrast that I want. Again, just a light dry brush approach to get the desired effect, and the same on the feet and the soles of the feet. I'm just using a dabbing motion just to create that contrast that I like. Now once all that's dried, I want to go in with the light green yet again and just create another texture with a dabbing motion on each individual scale, just to highlight it even further. And this really makes it pop. So again, with not too much paint on the brush and working it around, I'm just feathering it onto the surface, and I'm using a lightly approach. To paint the eyeballs as carefully as I can, just with some white acrylic. And I'm revisiting the fur or the hair on the back, the rest of the red areas, just to give it more highlights yet again with an even more vibrant reddy orange, so that I can create like a flame look to the dragon's appearance. And now I'm just touching it off with a very warm yellow. Again, that'll just give it that look of flames and fire. Just the dry brush approach again, just lightly, and just working it till I get the intensity that I like, and trying to blend it obviously at the same time into the deeper recesses. Using the same light contrasts for the brown, I am now painting the nails and the claws just to have them stand out too. As for the pupils of the eyes, I'm just using a fine line marker. It's a lot easier to get a steady pupil as opposed to using a brush, from my perspective anyway. And I'm just using some white acrylic to create a slight reflection on the pupil. So there you have it, humans. That's basically it. I am really happy with this end result. It's very different from how it first started. Just basically a plain white dragon with some red contrast. And I've gone for a more traditional look, the traditionally green scaled dragon. And all that lovely sculpt and detail has come out now, much more evident than it was before. And I think he looks pretty good. And if you've got one, why don't you give it a go? So this is Retro Rocket Man, over and out.